with what another country's culture or philosophy thinks, that's okay. I don't think any one country should feel the right to influence or pressure another. Of course, a lot of the conversation in the American context has to do with economic pressure, right? When they come into a country that has a high level of dependence on them for security or economic stability, they have the leeway or the juice to sway.
Hi guys, welcome to Kenganda. My name is Janita Maya and this is the Repat Podcast. I'll let my co-hosts introduce themselves.
Yes, indeed. Master Gabs here. Happy to be a part of the Repat Podcast one more time. American born.
Happy to have you.
Ghanaian by heritage, and I am proudly allergic to average.
Okay.
I am definitely below average. Shout out to Agaba for this drink I'm sipping on. African American living in Uganda.
Now, if you've been watching the news, you know that recently the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala, I think it's different. You guys pronounce it differently, but I'm going to pronounce it the African way. Over here, we call her Kamala Harris. She was recently in Ghana. Listen to what she had to say and let's react to it.
Let me be clear about where we stand. First of all, for the American press who are here, you know that a great deal of work in my career has been to address human rights issues, equality issues across the board, including as it relates to the LGBT community. And I feel very strongly about the importance of supporting the freedom and supporting and fighting for equality among all people, and that all people be treated equally. I will also say that this is an issue that we consider, and I consider, to be a human rights issue, and that will not change.
To say we're currently based in Uganda, and recently Uganda passed the anti-LGBTQIA bill, so no gays or anything allowed in the country. We also have a podcast on that, so make sure you watch that. So yeah, guys, what do you think about the vice president?
I mean, I feel like this is a broken record.
Ooh.
We keep getting, not we, but people keep getting into the same topic time and time and time again. Mm-hmm. This is another instance of the American government, this time by way of its vice president, the official representative of the American government in this context, right? This is the American government trying to influence its values and ways of thinking on countries and cultures that have absolutely different ways of being, different ways of governing their society, different ways of establishing principles around how life should be led.
Yeah.
And just because the American laws dictate that things should operate a certain way doesn't mean that other countries need to observe those same principles. Now, when it comes to human rights, when it comes to the high level thinking about what human rights are, leave alone which country establishes what human rights are, right? Because human rights in Uganda versus Ghana versus the US versus Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, it's all different. It's all unique, right?
Yeah.
What one would consider human rights within that country. But just as human beings ourselves, I think the big piece around this is, man, to each their own, right? It's easier said than done. It's definitely not something that is a philosophy that is embraced for each, to leave each to their own. So I would say, similarly, to each country, their own, right? To each their own. If this society embraces certain elements of a lifestyle that makes it feel as though it's not aligned with what another country's culture or philosophy thinks, that's okay. I don't think any one country should feel the right to influence or pressure another. Of course, a lot of the conversation in the American context has to do with economic pressure, right? When they come into a country that has high level of dependence on them for security or economic stability, they have the leeway or the juice to sway how policies are created in that country. It's when a country stands up and acts independent, as independent thinkers and as independent operators, and tells the Americans, listen here, whatever it is that you're talking about, that's not how we feel. That's not the principle that we uphold. And that's now where the conversations get dicey, because Americans don't like being told that their way of being is not the best way of being. So, you know, I think Kamala is just speaking as an American does everywhere they go, right? And again, I'm not saying Americans as they, because I grew up there. I was born there. I was raised with a lot of the, you know, thoughts and mindset that generally Americans have around freedom and the right to choose and all of that stuff. But when it comes to going into somebody else's territory and telling them what to do, nah, that's a no-go for me. I'm not down with it.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned two countries in particular. Afghanistan, I'll leave that alone.
Right.
Because Afghanistan has been in turmoil for many years, back and forth and things, not very stable. But I believe you mentioned Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes, I did.
Let me ask you a question. If Kamala Harris goes to Saudi Arabia, Oman, Jordan, the United Emirates, Qatar, does she say, you know, I want to talk about in front of their president, or in case of the Dubai,
right?
They have a king there. His face is everywhere. I forgot.
Yes.
The guy, yeah. Does she say the same thing?
No.
Why doesn't she say the same thing?
They don't have any level of deference to America because they don't depend on America for anything economically, right? These countries are independently able to resource their own growth and development. And so as long as they're not reliant upon the U.S. for funding to establish its development agenda or for, you know, military protection or for anything like that, as long as a country doesn't need America, America knows that it doesn't have the right to presume to tell them what to do about anything.
So you can't go to Saudi Arabia, where Islam is founded,
right,
and push gay rights, can you?
No,
you cannot.
Kamala Harris can't even get back to the plane talking like that, can she?
Right.
And she knows that.
Right.
Let's go back to one of the classic episodes here on this channel that didn't get a lot of views. And you commented, you weren't on that, but you commented. Why nobody takes black people, what? Seriously.
Yeah.
So here's where the black world has to understand where you are in the world. And it could be dealing with the fact that you are black, or it could just be with the fact that you just can't defend yourself and you can't afford to take stances that somebody else respects. And a lot of times people get confused. I talk to some of the people in the African-American community. As an individual, you're doing very good in America. Nigerian Americans are actually the top performing group in America, and followed by some of the African brothers, sisters, and Asians. But in the black diaspora, you see a lot of Ivorians, Ghanaian Americans. In fact, you have some Ghanaian Americans that own black African-American banks. They bought them out. But how do they look at you as a people? You can't defend yourself. Now, what is Kamala Harris in Ghana also looking for? Because the president there, Nana, is it Akufo-Addo?
Yes. Akufo-Addo, yes.
Addo, yeah. He's not a young man by any means. My mom is 73. This guy's almost 80. He's 79. His father was one of the original Big Six, one of the first judges in colonial Ghana. Okay? But we all know that the Ghanaian economy was exposed during what? Recently, what happened? COVID. So a lot of this talk of Africa is rising, Africa is the next wave, which is true because Africa has that just potential. But we haven't maximized it yet. So the United States is coming in, and Otto, to his credit, he talks real tough. Have you heard the guy? He talks tough. He's one of the most outspoken presidents on the continent of Africa. He talks even more than Museveni does. Museveni has his sound bites. But Otto is really expressive. He talks to the diaspora more. Museveni says he thinks here and there. And to be fair, Museveni is he's an excellent debater. This guy is like cold with ice. He's a very cerebral. Otto is also cerebral, but he talks real tough. But his economy is in shambles. Look at where the CD was. Like 3 years ago, $1 would get like almost 3.5 CDs. $1 now is like 11 CDs. Ghana has a terrible economy. Accra, Ghana, as a city, on paper, as far as ages to rent, is one of the most expensive cities in the world. It's up there with, what's the capital city of Angola? What is it called? You know?
Luande.
That's why you pay the big bucks. Exactly. So Accra, Ghana is in shambles. They don't have any really industrial supply chains to compete with anybody else like they should on the national playing field. Their electricity is better than Nigeria, but they're still little guys on the world stage. So Kamala Harris is not in Ghana just to make diplomatic relations. She's there also to offer aid. So because I'm here to offer aid, Mr. Otto, here's how I'm going to make you look like, I'm not calling him, but what she thinks. That's how she looks at the guy. Because I'm going to tell you in your face, in front of your own country, we stand on LGBTQ rights. In front of your people, I want everybody to see this, that you're there, standing there. And before we go there, we're going to tell you what we're going to do. You're going to take your out there, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. Now, if you want to make yourself look good in front of the camera, that's fine. But we're going to put our initiative out there, and you're going to eat this, okay? And defend your, so you don't look stupid in front of your people. But can Otto go to the United States? And can he say the same thing? We denounce LGBTQ in Ghana. Can he come to the USA and say that? No. He probably won't even make it back to the plane. So the thing is that the lesson here is, as much as individually we think that we are successful as black people and we think that we're great, and Kamala Harris is considered to be, she's half Jamaican, half Indian. She went to Howard University.
Yeah.
But she grew up with the experience of what you would consider to be what? African American. She was from San Francisco, had that affair with Willie Brown, who was a former mayor, allegedly. So look what the states is doing. The states using black people now to do their bidding. They've been doing that. I'll tell you who else did it. Barack Obama. Barack Obama became the president of the United States. What was one of the first things he did? Zimbabwe. Sanctions continued from the George Bush regime. So the United States don't even need to have a white face. Hell, they'll even send the military in there, and 20% of the military is African American. So the thing about it is that we need to understand as blacks people that if you want to be able to take a position on what you want your society to be like, it's a few things you need to be able to do. Number one, you got to be able to defend your country from invasion, and not necessarily invasion from the United States. Because all they got to do is pay somebody right there in your country. Okay? Because we've seen it happen here. We've seen it happen everywhere. So can you defend what you're talking about? Then who are your neighbors that you have problems with? Right? Good thing about East Africa, most of them have been on the same page. But you need to be able to protect and to be able to reinforce on them. Saudi Arabia, if the United States got out of control, what are we seeing right now in the world? Brazil, Chinese, they're dropping the dollar. So we don't like what you do. She ain't going to China talking about LGBTQ rights, is she? No. Now, Brazil is I was there. They don't care. But India, come on now. Russia, I think it might be was looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be able to defend yourself. But a lot of African presidents don't even trust the military for a coup. You see? So black people need to be on code in the world. Because if I could show up to your country and to you, obviously I don't respect you. I don't take you serious. I can do it in front of your president. And what you gonna say about it? I'm going out of here next morning and the Eagle has landed. I'm getting up out of here. What you gonna say about it? He can't say nothing. He needs aid.
True. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that's why he also gave a political answer, because he didn't give a stance. He just gave a very vague.
But the thing is, he knew that. Listen, let me tell you something about the United States. Do you ever heard of William Tubman? Mm-hmm. William Tubman was an African-American descent individual mixed with Liberian. He was the president and dictator of Liberia for like 27 years. Now, Liberia is the only colony that came from the United States. Okay? So the United States will tell the guy, look, we're going to write your speech. You're going to get out there and say exactly what we told you to say. Now, it wasn't until William Tolbert, who came after that, William Tolbert tried to push back a little bit, and they 1980. But the same thing is going on here. Do you need the money, Mr. Addo? Yes, we're in shambles. We need the aid. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. We're going to go out there and say this, and you're going to give this political answer so it doesn't make you look so bad in front of your own individual population. But we want your population to start accepting LGBTQ rights. Because if Ghana accepts it, and the reason why they're choosing Ghana to do this, Ghana is the country in America. I hate to say this, and I know Nigerians are there or whatever. Nigerians are like, but Ghana is having the most influence in the diaspora. Like Nigeria has more influence over Africa and in the world, but amongst the diaspora, it's Ghana.
True.
Ghana is the king of the diaspora.
Yeah.
So let's try this in Ghana, because Nigeria is even worse off than Ghana. Why not Nigeria? It's strategic. The year of return happened in Ghana. So let's do it there where the hope for the African return is there. So we want to bring the gay stuff, and hopefully, if that happens, we do have African, we live in DC, Atlanta. Some of the brothers and sisters there. They, especially in black cities, homosexuality is a different level. Like if you lived in DC before or Baltimore,
it's different.
It's Atlanta.
It's different.
Let's just say brothers and sisters do it. It's very opulent. I will say that.
Yeah, that's a good word to use.
Yes. They want to bring that there with the diaspora. Because a lot of people from in America don't want to go to Ghana for fear of, like, okay, I'm gay, but they don't like that. But if it comes gay, Accra will become like Atlanta overnight.
That's really true. That's really true. I think so. For me, part of this whole thing is like new millennium American imperialism, right? So we're trying to make sure that the Americans, who kind of see their foothold as the global superpower that it once was 40 years ago, right?
Okay, come on.
America is seeing itself now no longer relevant as the world's number one superpower. Right? Before America, and it still does call itself, and I think America is the only nation that refers to America as the leader of the free world, right? The American president, according to Americans, is the leader of the free world.
Yes,
right?
yes, it's true.
Right? So Joe Biden, right, is the leader of the free world. Donald Trump at one point was the leader of the free world.
Obama too.
Key word being the free world, right? So what that suggests to me is that if you're diametrically opposed to American principles or the philosophies that the Americans support, you don't support the free world. You don't support freedom in the world, right? Whereas here in Uganda, for example, we experience freedom to another degree, right? We experience freedom at an incredible level, right? From the freedom that people have to criticize the president and criticize the government, to economic freedom, to the freedom to organize and conduct your life in as many ways as you possibly can, with the exception now of the LGBTQ lifestyle choices that people have now made illegal.
Yes.
Right? So I think, America trying to impose its will upon others is a last-ditch effort, like grasping at straws, so to speak. I don't think that there's a big coincidence either with the fact that in Africa in particular, right, a lot of African nations are leaning further and further away from American influence and getting into bed with the Asians, right? China in particular, right? I think there are a lot of cultural principles, so to speak, particularly maybe as it pertains to this LGBTQ agenda, where the Chinese see more eye to eye. They see more theoretically aligned with the governments of these nations, where they're establishing very strong long-term partnerships, right? So I think this is a representation, and Kamala is really just showing her cards here to really want to impose America's will, not only because we're dangling a carrot in front of you, right? You want our aid, therefore you need to comply with our way of what we think how your country should be run. Culturally, politically, legally, what have you. But I think also at the same time, America is going to continue to push its agenda to test how influential as a nation they truly are. You have to measure. You have to measure how influential you can be by trying people. So I'm going to try you.
That's a great point.
And then I'm going to see if you push back or not.
That's why I get paid the big bucks here.
Before, America didn't have to try people. It was assumed and understood that, okay, the Americans are coming through. Whatever it is that they want is what we're going to give. Whatever it is that they believe is the right way of being is the example of quality and excellence, and therefore that's what it is that we're going to do. But now, people are very ready and capable and successfully pushing back on a lot of these philosophies and theories that the Americans are pushing forward. And so,
let me just say this. It's not just Americans, right? Because America don't just roll by itself. When America says something, there's the European Union behind it.
True.
So we in NATO. So it's just like America feel that way. America got homeboys. And homeboys, and it's like homeboys that they can call together. Like, people just say it's America showing up. Who's there next to America? Canada, France, Germany, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain. Hey, man, they're all in their bed together. So it ain't just like America coming to get you. That's why they have close proximity with each other. When America is speaking, so is Germany. So is Britain. And so is France. And if you think that France can't come get you, don't forget the homeboys, Australia and New Zealand. They're all taking the same stance. And dare I say, in some aspects, South Africa. Because you see how the EFF pushed back on Uganda. So, hey, and you got sellouts here in Africa that they are already ready to. So when America is speaking, it just ain't them. They got their partners with them.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So when America come and get you, everybody coming to get you in the West. Because when America give you sanctions, it ain't like France gonna talk to you. It ain't like Britain gonna talk to you. They roll together. So that's another thing to think about, because because America can say, look, they ain't dealing with what we dealing with. Hey, Britain ain't gonna deal with what you dealing with either, because America ain't dealing with you. France ain't gonna deal with you for the most part. You know what I'm saying? So Spain ain't gonna Italy and all of them got. If you look at the best armies and the militaries in the world, you will see China, you will see Russia, you'll see USA up front, but the rest of the top 20 are all European countries. So when America speaks, they got their partners with them. So that's something. So that's something to think about.
I mean, I think theoretically, the American stance on human rights is a noble thing.
Right.
Right? Theoretically, it's very noble to travel the world and talk to the leaders of countries that happen to have a questionable record on human rights and talk about what we would like to see happen, right?
Although they commit the most human rights violations.
Exactly. Right. I was about to say that although American citizens living in the United States, and you don't even necessarily have to be an American citizen, you can be a citizen of another country, but happen to be living in the U.S., a lot of people would say that their human rights in the U.S. suffer, right? And fix what's in your backyard before you come to us and start talking to us about how we want to run things in our yard, right? That's a conversation that really, really needs to be paid closer attention to because, you know, there are cases of systematic oppression in the United States. There are cases of, in the legal system itself, the disenfranchisement and the mass incarceration of Black Americans that could be, by any other country's estimation, considered a human rights violation. Right? So
great point.
People continue to talk about gun violence, right? Shootings, mass murder, all of these things that the lawmakers and the politicians in the United States would seemingly be motivated to change for the benefit and the betterment of the life of their constituents and the residents of the country, but they're motivated by other reasons why not to change it. And I think it's also causing a great deal of skepticism when Kamala comes to Ghana and the Ghanaian president is listening to her say how much, importance should be placed upon human rights here in Ghana. But it's like, come on now. You know what I mean? Don't be a hypocrite, right?
Yeah.
And I think the hypocrisy of statements like that is something that can't be ignored. America has a very terrible human rights record domestically within its own country. America doesn't go out into other countries violating. It does enough violation on its own home soil.
Yeah.
So I think that's a point that really waters down Kamala's argument as well, because you can't have so many people dying, suffering, having lack of opportunity, systematically oppressed, families being torn apart and ruined. Yet there are specific instances where people who are in positions of power can and choose not to influence a better way of things being, right? Can and choose not to. Keyword is choose not to.
Hello.
Right? So it all just stinks to me. It all just stinks to me.
Go ahead, Joan.
Yeah, and speaking as an African, most African countries have like certain cultural values and things that they follow, or things that their parents or the older generations have put in place so that the younger generation can be able to like use to navigate and move through life. Yeah. So it's like if I come to your home and you have certain rules and you have certain values, I should be able to respect your values and your rules.
That's right.
And say, you know what, in Agava's home, maybe you take off your shoes at the door. So if I'm coming to your home, I'm not going to say, oh, you know what, it's my human right to wear shoes inside your home. I want to walk around with my shoes, something like that. So if I come to your home, I'll be able to respect your values. So I think that's something the US is not clicking, like they say. I feel like if you go to a country and they have certain values and certain norms, it should be able to respect those values and norms instead of just imposing their own, agenda. Because even if the US is okay with LGBTQIA, that doesn't mean that everyone is okay with that. And you just have to be respectful of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're not going to respect you if you can't defend what you're talking about.
Well, that's a point too.
I mean, that's just the reality that Black people got to realize. Nobody is going to respect you. Like George Macon said, shout out to him, the world is full of gangsters. If you can't protect your stuff, they're going to just come take it. So if I can't defend myself, it's like anybody, if you're with a woman or a man and you're just too nice or somebody can take advantage of you, they will. So Africa and its positions, you look at North Africa, Egypt even, you know who ended Britain's world powership? It was Egypt. You know? Egypt ended, like they had that war, I forgot what it was. It was a war somewhere. But Egypt in their president at the time, they embarrassed Britain. It took them from being a world power to the United States. Yeah? But Egypt could defend themselves. The dude even called, I think I forgot his name, he called the Queen the bitch of England at the time. And there was nothing that Britain can do about it. But now when you look at Africa, Africa cannot defend themselves. If they want to have weapons of mass destruction, they have to like get approval.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, this is what we want to do. You have even, I think, Tolbert in 1980 got killed before the year. The United States wanted to set up an army base there in Monrovia or close to somewhere there. He said no. So they're like, oh, okay. There goes Tolbert. You got assassinated and disemboweled. How to die. Like, you know what I mean? Let's take your, yeah. So shoot you, and then they like, not after shooting you, let's take out your everything. Okay? So we can do that to you if we don't respect you. But to make it to another level, a lot of us as blacks, because of our colonial education, Dr. John Henry Clark said this, whenever whites run the educational system, shout out to Brother George Maker for telling me this too, because I didn't know this myself. They will never teach you to be able to beat them. So the education we learned in the United States was good for to be in the corporate structure, but we don't think with a black mind. When I went, even if you go to HBCU, you're not thinking, you're learning about the struggle, but you're not thinking with the black mind. That's why Nigerian Americans get educated in America. But you see Lebanese in some aspects, because most Nigerians are very good at running their economy. But you see Lebanese who are not as talented as those Nigerian Americans in their economy. Because we don't think with a black mind. We don't think about, okay, this education is to help my people and to elevate my people, which is an individual choice that I made just because of, you know, my own, you know, growth and stuff like that. And I try to teach my people that. And Joan will tell you, always think with a black mind. Don't just think about the business and the industry as you've learned it. Think with a black mind. The Lebanese think with a Lebanese mind. The Chinese think with a Chinese mind. When we get trained in America or in Britain or even, dare I say, here in Uganda to be educated, some of the brothers and sisters were still wearing wigs as judges. I'm not here to begrudge them, but you're not solving things the way that the local chiefs solve things or the local people solve things in the village. That's why Botswana's doing good. You're thinking with a black mind. And once Africa and the black world start thinking with a black mind, we will think in the ways that defend ourselves from adversity. But we're basically being educated to serve who? Them. I went to medical school to go into the medical system to serve patients of any race. It's a great career. You even have a black wife. You move to the suburbs. Your child grows up grows up with white people. Goes to Princeton. Your son gets a white wife. He don't think with who. All that education don't mean nothing if it don't impact your people. What do you do for your women? What do you do for your men? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the powers that be think for, look at Macron. Macron went to an elite school for the French. That think with what? A French mind. So now when the blacks have to understand in the world, we are being educated by them even in our own countries, respectively in the African world, but we're being colonized. Most blacks are not even allowed. Joni said you can't even speak Luganda in some of these schools. Yet you're in Uganda. The young ladies are having to cut their hair off. Yeah. But the white kids that come study here, they got to cut their hair off. Or the Indians, they got to cut their hair off.
Yes, they don't.
They don't? Because we don't think with a black mind. So how can you ever rise to the level of them when you don't put your people first? And in this podcast, for the rest of my life, you call me whatever you want to call me, but everything you do, you got to think for with a black mind first. Because your people can't get ahead. What's the use of all these? I'm going to tell you one thing, right? Now in the world, this is a statistic. My grandfather, I tell the story all the time. 1949, he became a officially born again Christian because he almost died in that year. But at that same year, he was ordained a deacon at the Macedonia Baptist Church in North Richmond, California. It's still there. So at that particular time in history, blacks, mostly people like him, it was very uncommon to see a black person going to school. He might have had a 10-year-old education. I don't know what you call it here, but we call it third or fourth grade in the American system.
Right.
Martin Luther King said in one of his last speeches that I feel like I'm infiltrating. I've integrated my people into a burning house. And he talked about in 1968 how blacks were doing better in 1958 than they were in 68 with less education. But let's look at 2023. Blacks are the most educated that they've ever been. Yet they own what? The least in comparison to those times. Because why? Black people's minds are so fucked up. They don't think about using their education to uplift their own folks. And that's popular. That's always here and all around the black world. No, we praise when African Americans or Nigerian Americans, they graduate Harvard Medical School, we say black excellence. But we're going into the system treating white people. Yet our institutions in our neighborhoods are non-existent. And there are more Nigerian doctors in America than there are in Nigeria. How can you tell me about black excellence when you don't think with a black mind? And you can never develop your people thinking about your individual aspects in another group. No group thinks that. Even Jews. Look at South Korea. What's the name of the best show right there on Netflix? It was confusing. It's called Squid Game, right?
Yeah.
Now look at how the South Korean thinks. The African American, the African thinks outside of most Nigerians. I'm gonna go to Hollywood. I'm gonna learn what I learned from Hollywood, and I'm gonna stay there. I'm tired of niggas. That's black people. The South Korean says, I'm going to go to America and then I'm going to come back and impact the whole Asian world. Japan, China, Singapore, Malaysia, some of these Asian tigers. I think Singapore is one of them. Malaysia is one of them. And I'm going to give the culture of the South Korean, which is very similar to Japan. And I'm going to control the Asian mind and to develop the people. Similar to what Nollywood, shout out to them, did with West Africa. Amapiano did in South Africa. You can't go to no club here in Africa, Uganda, without hearing Amapiano. Can you?
Nope.
Because that sound is thinking with a what? We're thinking with a black mind, right? So black people in general, we have to get these educations from these people and think with a mind that empowers us, but we don't do that. Then we get mad when the USA pull up on our block and say, we don't like what your culture represents because you didn't think about your people.
That's true.
And that's why we don't have nothing. But if we thought like Arabs, they couldn't pull that. That's the difference between Arabs and us. Arabs think with an Arab world mind. Jews think like that. The blacks think of, I've arrived, black excellence, and go marry the white woman or Asian woman and be proud of that. And the Arabs won't accept that way of life. And anytime you think like that, look at the Indians in Uganda. The richest person, one of the richest people here in Uganda is not even Uganda, it's an Indian. Why? Go to, I won't even call his club. Go to any of his places he has. Look at his management. Do you see Ugandans as a management?
Indians. Even security. The head security person is Indian.
Who is his management?
Yeah.
He says he's a Ugandan, and Ugandans are sometimes, and I'm not trying to criticize guys because I like what he does. Ugandans will argue he's a Ugandan. When I go to his places, I don't see nobody looking like you that run it. He thinks of what? An Indian mind, although he don't know probably how to get around to India his damn self. But that's the power of thinking for your people. And black people, we are lost. Like Brother Omar Wallace said, we have lost a lot of our black consciousness, who we are. We've lost our way. But once we do that, then America can't punk you. Nobody can punk you. The Chinese is in Africa right now kicking Kenyans out of restaurants in Kenya or out of stores in Kenya. Can you go to China as the African and do that? They'll cut your neck off right there where you stand. Because they think, well, what? A Chinese mind. So once we can restore the black mind, watch how the blacks change. Because the black way of doing things was a world power once. We lost our way. Mm-hmm. So this is the problem that we are having right now, and the United States is coming full circle. You don't respect yourself. Why should we respect you? I'm gonna drink to that right there.
That's deep, man.
I was building, bro. I saw you. You was really digging it. I was building it up, brother. Like the Philadelphia brothers, but California got some cold pro blacks too. Oakland.
I mean, I really don't have anything more to add to that. I think you're absolutely right, man.
Yeah.
I think that's a mic drop moment right there. We need to get smarter. We need to think with an African mind.
Yes.
I think that's the solution to it all, man.
Yeah.
That's why Botswana is doing good. I hate to say this. Look at Kagame. Kagame and Dr. Drew talk about this. When they had the situation, they could put everybody in jail. They brought in the tribunal. Let's solve the things the way that we used to solve it. Mm-hmm. Some go to jail, some do community service. Look at Rwanda today. Kagame is one president that I see. Well, shout out to Museveni too. I see some elements of that. But when you think, we don't think the same way as everybody else in the black world. We need to get back to solving the things the way we have always done it. And it works.
That's true.
Democracy might work for the British and America in the way they do it. That don't mean it works for us. We're different people. So once we get there, you can't tell me about our way of life because we can defend ourselves on our principles. But if we can't, because we're corrupt, we're lying, we're stealing from each other, America knows that. Oh, we get them this money, they're going to take the money anyway. And then they know, get a check, this is IMF, give them the loan. They'll never develop them potholes in the first place.
So who does the accountability belong to here aside from, our people, right? Mm-hmm. Because you can't tell Kamala to stop going out there and preaching what she's preaching, right? She's not going to stop that. And, when you think about the audiences that she's speaking to, right? She knows, right, that they're in a position where they owe a debt of responsibility to listen to what they're being told.
Yes.
So can we, as the Africans who are demanding to be recognized as, we don't need to fall into what you're telling us, right? Mm-hmm. Can we, as those Africans who demand respect to be put on our names, can we, as Africans who want to exist as sovereign states and not be encroached upon by the thinking of Western American thinking and all of that stuff, right? Can we, as those Africans who espouse all of those values, also think with a Ugandan mind? Mm-hmm. Can we think with a Rwandan mind? Mm-hmm. Can we think with a Ghanaian mind? Can we think with a inward-looking focus of uplifting ourselves first and foremost and really cementing ourselves and being able to stand 10 toes down in that if we say that we don't need you or we say that we're going to reject whatever it is that you're proposing that we need to consider as our way of being, we can actually stand on it and actually mean that, because we're convicted, because we're so truly entrenched in this belief, and because we're self-sufficient, right? Because we're self-sufficient, and because we're now thinking about us first, right? And we're not living to impress. We're not living to live up to, right? We're living to set our own new standards. I think if we can get there, then a lot of these conversations around people telling African nations how to live, what human rights means, what civilized society should look like, a lot of those conversations will go away very quickly.
Let's ask Joan because she's been waiting to talk.
No,
what do you think, Joan?
No, I do agree with you guys. I think everything you guys have said.
Are you drinking water? And I exposed myself and how I met you, right?
Yeah.
As black people, if you don't know anything about the Repat podcast, we have a big problem a big pandemic or epidemic, however you want to call it in an ecological term, and how we treat each other. A biostatistic, whatever. And one of the things is a lot of black people can, I've noticed this, when things happen, Black Lives Matter, we easily can unite when we feel like somebody is blatantly disrespecting us. Mm-hmm. But it's very short-lived when we have to deal with one another. Because it's easy to unite with an oppressor, but when you have to deal with each other, it takes work. It takes effort. In dealing with black people who have lost their Negro consciousness and lost their way, and let's say you become a person that's become more woke, and I have, just in practicality, some brothers and sisters, they read books and they become woke, but I've been dealing with Negroes in America. I've dealt with them in Europe. So my experience is practical. Mm-hmm. So how we treat each other, how we treat our men, how we treat our women, it takes effort because some brothers are lost. And it's easy to call a brother a sellout or whatever. And I've noticed that's not the way. We need the brothers that are sellouts, or y'all call them the other words, raccoons, right? We call that word, without the ra. And how we respect each other as men and respecting our women. Like Joan will tell you, and this is not in 2019, I respect women to a certain degree, but it wasn't until like it is now. I have a lot of respect for women in general than I did in 2019. Like I wasn't, I was still decent despite my stuff. But now how important respecting black women is to me now, it wasn't the same 4 years ago. But but after really being in the knowledge and shout out to some of the brothers in the pro-black community, protecting your women is something that every group does. You can't deal with Egyptian women or men and women are protected. Arab women, right? And the black man got to do the same thing, protecting his women. But furthermore, the most part is if any country notices that you don't have any respect for your men, you're weak. And one of the reasons the United States wants to get African men and black men off cold and angry because they want to be able to divide the men. If the men are in poverty, if the men are weak, that's why China stopped all that stuff over there with the other alternative community. You can't air it over there. They notice it makes their men act a certain way. Mm-hmm. But now, with us, our men are not united. But if we can get our black men worldwide, our men can build over Africa overnight. And when men want to be able to protect what they got, they will also kill if they need to. And the white people will kill. Ain't no doubt about it. But if the black man can kill too if he need to, but you gotta be able to defend. So it comes with the mindset is I'm willing to die for what's I feel is valuable, and a lot of us as blacks we're not there yet, and that's the problem.
Okay, I feel like that is the perfect way to end this episode. Unless Agawa would like to build.
No, it's complete.
It's complete.
It's complete.
It's done and dusted.
Yes.
Okay, Agawa, tell people where to find you.
You can follow me at Master Gabs on every platform, Twitter, Instagram, Allergic to Average podcast, A2A_podcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Check us out. We've got a lot of good content coming out.
Perfect. And Shay?
Man, a guy that got me on this Captain Morgan, y'all. So my bladder is full, but I think I built it up.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Pro Blacks, man. We in the building.
Yeah, but I think this was an amazing episode. Thank you guys. Don't message him, but send us links to teamkenganda@gmail.com if you have something you want to share with us. We can,
because Jonita is pretty mean, man. Like, because I'll try to actually help you, but Jonita gonna tell you no.
No, I help everyone. I reply.
Jonita gonna tell you no. If it's like pick me from the airport, she gonna tell you no. So for sure.
Yeah. Email us at teamkenganda@gmail.com
to get your no.
And subscribe to this YouTube channel. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Kenganda Nation. Subscribe to the Pan-African Dating Show. We'll see you guys next time.